Hello and welcome to Podtoid. I'm CJ.
I'm Dan. Oh no, I'm Chris.
I'm Dan. That's me.
I'm definitely Charlotte.
I'm Spartacus.
Okay. Technically, we're all Spartacus.
I'm not Spartacus. You can fuck off with those allegations.
This is episode 446. Thank you for joining us. We had the week off last week, and boy, what a week it was. As I told Occams in Slack, who knew I'd come around to support K-pop fans on Twitter? I didn't think that was possible. And yet, here we are. Obviously, this has been a trying time for the country as nationwide protests continue following the death of George Floyd. It's been both an incredibly blessed thing to watch as well as nauseating when you see protests against police brutality met with unspeakable acts of police brutality. Way to prove the point, guys. So yeah, that's just been this past week, and if you have been on social media at all, that's just what you've been exposed to. But there have been a lot of non-violent videos worth paying attention to as well. Yesterday, there was a massive protest in Philly that seemed to stretch for miles. It was just amazing how many people came out for that. And then this morning, I saw a video out of the UK of people pulling down a statue of Edward Colston and then throwing it into the bay. That was very fun to watch, that one.
That was something. And this may come as a surprise to you, but a lot of British people are angry about that.
What? British people angry about erasing their colonialism? That shocks me.
It's great footage. The best part about it is it's in 3 acts, because there's a video of it coming down, then there's a video of it being dragged through the street, and then finally there's a video of it being dropped into the harbour. It's
very dramatic.
And all the comments are just like, where are the police? and I wish the statue had killed all of them when it fell on them.
Aww. But
those statues are like the thinnest metal. Like they look like they're bronze, solid bronze, but it's kind of just painted to look like it's heavy,
It definitely looked like when it hit the water that it was like it wasn't going to sink straight to the bottom right away, because it did not seem that heavy. It looked like it was a tin statue.
But to give you an example of just kind of like a chunk of Britain, like the first comment, literally the very first comment under the video I saw of it dropping into the harbour said, "Don't worry, we'll put it back up."
Right.
You're going to go fish that shit out of there? Have fun with that.
I hope he personally does it too. Like, he has to just personally himself go die for it. But up north, we had a real peaceful protest, including in Winnipeg. We had a protest here in Winnipeg for Black Lives Matter. Went all the way to the Human Rights Museum. It was super chill and relaxed. I met a bunch of people that played Pokemon Go between it all, so that was something. And everyone took a knee. It was real nice, including their own prime minister. It was all real chill and nice for the most part. I'm sure there was at least some areas of Canada that weren't so popular, but hey.
So you're saying these people Pokemon Go'd to the protest?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Yes, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I saw a video of a couple getting married and then immediately drawing a protest. So, people playing Pokemon Go while out there is like not the strangest thing I've seen. And we've had a lot of Confederate statues pulled down in our country. Apparently someone, an Egyptologist, posted a video on how they pulled down obelisks, and people decided to start using that on Confederate statues and found it works really well. It's a sound method for pulling down stuff you don't want up anymore.
I keep seeing the argument, like with this Colston statue, I keep seeing the argument that the problem with pulling these down is you're erasing history and not letting people be reminded of these monsters. And it's kind of like, well, we don't have a statue of Stalin up in the middle of town, do we, to remind us he existed or whatever? Like, we know, and they don't. We don't need something to commemorate the person's existence.
Yeah, we have this crazy thing called the internet, where anyone can look up any of that stuff at any time, and probably for the foreseeable future. And there's texts, there's documents. I think statues are at like the bottom of the list here for like information we need on people.
Plus, every one of those statues you pull down, that's space for another phone charging point. So
Exactly. I will say, in regards to Edward Colston and the internet, that Wikipedia, come on. If somebody is a slave trader, that should probably come before philanthropist in their bio, because it pretty much just cancels that out.
Well, it's that we don't need to kind of go into the full history here, but that's kind of the problem with the legacy of that man in Bristol, because when he died, he basically gave all his money to the city, and it was used to kind of, or even when he was alive, it was used to kind of fund hospitals and schools and stuff, which is like the crutch that people lean on for why none of the other stuff matters, because he did this. And that's why the statue was erected. And for like years, they've been trying to put up a plaque that basically said he did this, he did this, he did this, and also he traded some slaves. But they kept fighting back and forth on where the importance was placed on the plaque of what he did. And literally like 3 or 4 of these plaques went up on that statue that were just like worded differently every time. But it doesn't fucking matter anymore because the kids pulled it down and threw it in the sea. So
Not only pulled it down, but the video I saw after it came down, they started running over and jumping on it, which, it may be cheap metal, but it's still metal. And I can't imagine landing on that is going to feel good on your feet, or when you just fall back right off of it.
I tell you what I always remember. Do you know when they pulled down the statue of Saddam Hussein? Yeah. I always remember, if you watch that footage, it's been a long time since I've seen it, 25 years or whatever. But I remember the first thing that happens is a dude runs up to it and just punches it in the head full force. And I'm pretty sure he probably broke all the bones in his hand.
Good times. Good. It's been a really eye-opening couple of weeks here. And if anything, it's nice to see some immediate action taken, because, we don't know what the long-term effects of these protests are going to be. So at least in the short term, we know that there are good things happening with these statues of assholes coming down and being thrown into the water, or whatever's going to happen to the Confederate statues here.
There's just a lot of negative imagery coming out of the protests. And then some of it, obviously some of it like totally horrifying. So as always, this is always the case with any kind of like political upheaval or cultural upheaval. There needs to be these like kind of strong statements made, whether it's with a form of physical force or just with very, very powerful photography or music or any.
Yeah, I've been trying to like sort of my reaction to this past week is it's made like the whole COVID has been a big weight on everybody, and now there's the scenes of violence and upheaval, and that feels like even more. But I just have to step back and remind myself this is sort of the culmination of years, if not decades, of unfairness, and it's not that something terrifying is happening because it's a bad thing necessarily. It's hopefully a place from which healing can happen, if you know what I mean.
Right. Absolutely. And it's also been very educational, at least on my part, not just, what we see going on right now, but people pointing out, hey, here's all the atrocities from the past that you never learned about in school. And it's just like, wow, why didn't I learn about this? This definitely would have shaped my my outlook on the world a lot different had I known about stuff like the Tulsa race riots, or the fact that Europe had human zoos until the 1950s. What crazy shit is that? Just
like, I guess you round this up by just saying, be safe, like stay safe if you're out there.
Yeah.
Look after yourself and those around you.
Sorry, can I just say a quick thing, and also solidarity to all the journalists out there, because it's absolutely terrifying as well to hear that journalists are getting no protection, or in fact being directly attacked during some of the protests. And that should never be the case in a civilized society, that journalists are singled out and become the subject of violence for doing their job. So
absolutely. We're going to talk about games today. We are going to answer some listener questions. We got a few in from Saturday's post. But before I wanted to get into anything, I wanted to start us off, as I always do, with something we could hopefully laugh at, and that's something that's very hard to do right now. But we're going to try anyways. So, as you might remember, with all these protests going on, we're actually still kind of in the middle of a pandemic. And very slowly around the United States, cities are allowing businesses to open up. The places that will have the most difficult time reopening and staying afloat are probably going to be restaurants, because there are limitations on how many people you can have in your establishment at the same time, which means there's a lot of empty seats. Now, we've seen some of the steps that restaurants are taking to make their restaurants feel more full. There is one that put up mannequins in fancy 1800s dress to, make it look like their tables were more populated. And then there's this other restaurant in Colorado that's trying a different tactic. They're using ghosts. Sputnik, which is a restaurant located in Denver, Colorado, decided to make their restaurant feel less lonely by populating it with ghosts. And we're talking It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown types of ghosts here, not real ghosts or anything. But they have a ghost at the bar ordering drinks. And they have a ghost at some tables, drinking it up, hooping and hollering, just to make it feel more lively when people start coming back in and have to continue social distancing. And I think the ghosts are nice, but I would actually like to see the restaurant go all the way and just like make it a whole Monster Mash theme. You have ghosts, you have Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster. Just completely, if you're going to go with ghosts, just completely change your restaurant and go all the way with a Halloween theme year round.
I agree.
What are the ghosts ordering? Spooketti.
Oh, God damn it.
Or maybe Creep Suzette.
Maybe for starters, they have a packet of Monster Munch. I really want Monster Munch now. Monster Munch are the best crisps. They're so good.
What is a Monster Munch?
Chris, explain.
Me explain. Okay. It's old Britain. Chris, explain. They're a popular brand of crisps or chips that are like, they're kind of light and fluffy like Cheetos, but they're shaped kind of like a monster's hand, and they've been going in this country for decades and decades, probably since like the early 70s or something. And each flavor is designated by the monster that's on the front of the bag, but generally you can only find pickled onion now. Like there used to be like roast beef and bacon and I think some of these are still available in like multi-packs, but generally if you go to the shop to buy Monster Munch, the only real flavor you can find is pickled onion.
And are these only available Halloween time?
No. They're all year round.
Fantastic crisps. Fantastic. Pickled onion. Top quality crisp.
And they're also one of those many old British food items that used to be massive and are now tiny. Like it used to be that you could like, put them on your fingers like rings or whatever, and now they're just like really small. But, or maybe it's just that my hands have grown, in the last 30 years. But yeah, Monster Munch are a form of crisp, and they're scary. I don't know.
So like with filling up restaurants, I did see that there was one restaurant, I believe in China or Thailand. I forget where exactly, but they use plush pandas to sort of separate people out.
I would totally go to that restaurant.
And like me and a friend on Twitter were arguing about, because basically some of the pandas had hats, some of them didn't. And he was like, well, if I didn't get sat next to a panda that had a hat on, I'd be coming back another day. Which I agree with. I would be like, why am I not sat next to the special panda? Why is this lady sat next to the special panda? My custom is going elsewhere.
My kind of sense of anxiety and hypochondria is going to prevent me from eating in any restaurant for like the rest of the year, even when they start opening again and stuff like that. I'll probably be dodging them for a while.
Yeah, I mean, can I just, before, I know this is getting a bit off topic, but I just want to have a bone to pick with The Guardian over something. They wrote an article, I think it was today or yesterday, basically saying, giving people reasons why they should not be booking a holiday. And I'm like, seriously, people want to go on holiday, like a foreign holiday. They want to like export their germs to another country right now. And to be fair, the list was like, you shouldn't go because the government tells you not to, and because your travel insurance is invalid at the moment. Like, nobody's going to insure you. But I'm like, why do they have to write this? Like, there are people out there who are desperate to go on holiday, like it's a human right, and it really pisses me off because it's just so unimportant given what we've all gone through the past few months. It's like the least important thing ever is going to Spain and sitting on a beach and burning to a crisp.
Well, you've seen those photographs of Bournemouth, which is a beach here in England. You've seen those photographs. They're rammed. Absolutely fucking rammed. Like a beach so busy that you can't see the sand right in the middle of the pandemic. So people, they just don't give a shit. They just want to do what they want to do. They don't care.
You know, it would help that putting big plush pandas on towels so that you know how to stay far away from people on a beach. So just get 50,000 plush pandas out there. Pandas being native to the UK, from what I understand, so it would make total sense.
I'm just gonna open that restaurant here because I'm gonna corner the market in Britain of putting plush pandas in restaurants.
So get up and get down. 911 is joking your town.
All right, let's go ahead and move on from this and start talking about games. And I will go ahead and start us off today. For the past 2 days or so, I have been playing the Outer Worlds port on Nintendo Switch. Now, obviously, there are a lot of different opinions on this game, and for people who take the word of Digital Foundry as gospel, the Outer Worlds on Switch is a no-go. It is not good. I have seen other publications writing that it is so ugly they would hesitate recommending it to people even if it was their only way to play the Outer Worlds. So obviously there's a lot of hate out there for it. Before I picked it up, I asked Jordan, who did our hands-on with it for Destructoid, what it was like before his preview went up, and he told me the game looked like one of those videos where somebody plays a PC game at the lowest graphical setting, and that is a really apt description of what we're working with here. When I first started it up and making my way toward the Unreliable, my initial thought was I was wondering how they could possibly release a game in this condition, because it really did look bad, genuinely bad. The first area feels like you're playing through an alpha of the game, and then when you combine that with the gunplay that isn't all that exciting, I really started to regret the dropping $60 on this game. And apropos of anything else I'm going to say in this little bit, the Outer Worlds on Switch is not worth the $60 they're charging. Right now, it is simply not worth it. There are much better games you can get for that money right now. Or less, because Clubhouse Games is also just released. So the beginning is very ugly. But if I'm being 100% honest right now, the look of the game bothers me less and less the further I go into it. When I was going through that first area and I started to explore more of it, I started to appreciate the psychedelic nature of the visuals, because there are some crazy color combinations here, like hot pinks and neon greens that are just scattered all around the Vale, and it makes journeying through these parts kind of interesting. They're still just bad, Nintendo 64 level textures all over the place. There's some muddy ground, but by the time I got to Roseway, which is the second port on the first planet, I was kind of totally on board with the Technicolor Dreamcoat they assembled here. I especially like how all the water looks like that liquid metal you saw in a lot of music videos from the late 90s and early 2000s that people would just melt into and then reappear from. Even though it does have something about the look of it that I can get behind, this is probably the worst representation of what the Unreal Engine can do on Switch, because there are way better examples of what you can do with that on this hardware. Dragon Quest XI, Wolfenstein 2, Hellblade, Sasuna's Sacrifice, those are like great looking games that use the engine well, and this is not one of them. This is more like when Capcom tried to port the original Resident Evil to the Game Boy Color. That's kind of what we're looking at here.
So, what do we know? Like, is it confirmed why it is this state? Is it a hardware optimization problem, or is it a early release before it could be fine-tuned issue? Or
That is a good question. I'm not entirely sure what the reason is, other than maybe they just thought it was acceptable. I will say the second area of the game, or I guess third area, if Roseway would be the third area that you go to, is a lot more attractive than the first one. The first one is really kind of barren overall, but the second one has a lot more foliage and a lot more colors. And it's still, bad textures, but I kind of just think that they got it to a playable state. And once they did that, it was no point. They saw no reason in waiting any longer than to get it out.
Okay.
Obviously, the work from home didn't help. And I don't think it probably should have released this soon after the original release, because Dragon Quest XI on the Switch took I think a year and a half after the original PlayStation 4 version launched for it to come out, and this most definitely could have used more time in the oven, especially because when you consider that they haven't put out a trailer for this. It's all just been like still screenshots, because there's no way you're going to show a trailer of this game that makes it look enticing. You can do that with screenshots, because there are some parts of this game, indoor parts mostly, that look good, that look fine, that look like they look like other ports from PS4 and Xbox One down to the Switch. But a lot of this game, as soon as you step outdoors, it most evidently does not look like that. But there was the day one patch that I know wasn't available for when Jordan did his write-up, and I think when Digital Foundry did theirs, it looks like it may have fixed some of the issues. There is still pop-in, but the frame rate is a lot more stable than it was before. Load screens still take a while, and it really bothers me when I die and the last automatic save was before I moved into a new area. So I have to sit through a long load screen just to go into another long load screen to get back to where I was. That's really fucking annoying. But the only thing that really, really bothers me is that Outer Worlds has these big open spaces, and if you are going through it too fast, the game will stop and throw up one of those little spinning circle loading icons as it loads some of the textures that you're going to come to.
Yeah, it does the Oblivion thing.
Yeah. That was jarring when that first time that happened, and now it's kind of happening more and more. So it's like the game is pushing me away from running through it. But other than that, I came into the Outer Worlds not really being a fan of Western RPGs. Like, I've spent a whopping 5 minutes with Skyrim, and I've never played a Fallout game. I'm still not a big fan of the genre, but I'm kind of enjoying it the more I get into it, especially now that I've reached Roseway and the mission variety is a little more interesting here. I just wish my teammates would stop dying so quickly, because they fucking suck. They are made of glass, and I hate them. And speaking of Fallout games, of something I've never played, let's go on to Dan, who has been jumping back into Fallout 76 with its new, Wastelanders update?
Yep, that's right. The Wastelanders expansion, which is a sort of a big expansive new DLC thing for the story. It's free. It's supposed to be more or less the new baseline story of the game. I do like the real-time approach. It's set about a year and a half after the events of the initial base game. And now people are starting to come back to Appalachia after some of the events in the story that I won't spoil. But right off the bat, NPCs are back. That's the new big exciting thing, is there are people to talk to and things. And a lot of the dialogue and the voice acting is really solid, even better than what we saw in Fallout 4. And even skill checks are back. The little speech options where you can, if you have a specific skill or you did a specific thing in the past, will actually play an important role here. So, for example, in the initial base game, I joined the Enclave for story and plot reasons and became a general, essentially. And there's one quest in particular in the new Wastelanders expansion where you can just skip a whole section of it if you just tell this robot, "Hey, I'm a general, let me in." And the robot will be it'll scan your initial IDs and stuff, and be like, "Oh, right, you are. Well, come on in," instead of just fighting through a bunch of robots. So that's neat. Little skill check stuff like that is all there, depending on also your skills like sneak and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, overall, the writing, as I said, really good stuff. But it's all still trapped in Fallout 76.
Okay.
All of the initial Fallout 76 problems are still here. The game is still downright broken and buggy. I've had quest markers just not appear. So I'm just wandering around looking for the thing I have to do. And in a big open world, that can be a problem. So I'll have to Alt-Tab out and like type in Google, where do I go for X? And then I'll Alt-Tab back, and the game is broken and all fuzzy because I Alt-Tabbed out, and the resolution got all goobered. This is like the one game that will mess with the resolution of my monitor and even the color settings for some reason. I don't know why. It's like every now and then, like I'm too scared to Alt-Tab out, so I have to like whip out my phone to look up something. And yeah, that's kind of the point I'm going to hit on in the video. I plan on doing an Impulse, like a whole feature video for this. Impulse is back, by the way. We did a Valorant episode. Go watch that.
Woo.
There's more things we're going to hit on, more things we're going to go into, but ultimately, I'm enjoying Wastelanders. I think it's a great step in the right direction, but Fallout 76 is still Fallout 76, and I'm wondering if they'll ever address some of those core issues. Like, one example. In previous, Bethesda games, like Elder Scrolls, Fallout, etc., if you stole something, the NPCs would react. They'd be like, hey, don't steal shit. Everyone loves the Oblivion quote of stop breaking the law or whatever, and the guard comes. In this, since this game was never intended to have NPCs of any kind, you can just go into their house, their bar, whatever, and steal everything, and they won't bat an eye or care. So immediately I was like, oh, they don't care that I'm stealing items. So yeah, just little things like that, little quirks that stand out that make you go, right, this is still Fallout 76.
You might not want to reveal because it might be a spoiler, I don't know, but when you say there's NPCs in the game now, are these like recognizable faces, or is this like an original cast for the Fallout 76 universe?
Oh, this is an original cast. Fallout 76, like for further context, is set hundreds of years before the events of any of the Fallout games. It's the earliest Fallout game in the timeline. It's set like two decades or so after the bombs have dropped.
So you're not going to bump into Moira or anyone like that?
No, you're certainly not going to bump into Moira or anything like that. You might, maybe, like there could be a ghoul character or something, but like I have not seen anybody that I personally recognize.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to Charlotte. Charlotte, you have been diving into Grand Theft Auto 5. I see.
Yeah. I wasn't even sure if I was going to talk about this today because it's a bit of a weird one. Like, I feel like everybody kind of knows what they're getting into with the GTA if you've got like a sort of average level of knowledge of games, really. Like, people have seen like, videos of any of the GTAs and they all follow the same formula. Right. So I don't really have feelings about the game right now, even though I've been playing it for like 10 hours maybe. It's a really odd one. I feel like because it tells you at the autosave screen like how far in you are, like gives you a percentage, and I think I'm at like 40% now, but I still don't really have a clear opinion over whether I like the game or not. And I think the reason is because GTA is one of those games where you pick it up and you just go through the missions, and it's so smooth, the transition from mission to mission, that if you're in the sort of mood where you're like playing games to distract yourself from something, then you just like start mindlessly playing it and you don't even really think about the experience you're having. There's like this very old stereotype of, I think, around GTA 4 release of, the teenage boy who just sits in his bedroom and plays GTA and enjoys the violent side of it. And I've not been particularly like, getting into the violent side of it. I've been more trying to do as many side missions as possible, but it does feel like it's sort of almost a distraction from stresses in my real life at the moment. So I'm just mindlessly playing it and not thinking of the experience that I'm having.
It's a pretty good game. It's a pretty good choice of game for doing that. Like that and Saints Row and a lot of games of that genre. They're very good for playing without any for playing aimlessly, you could say.
Exactly. It's just, it sucks you in and you can't really think very much about the experience you're having because it's just popping from mission to mission. And that is a good thing about the game, I guess, that the transition between missions is so smooth that like you go off and do a few extra missions and then suddenly something else opens up and you can just go from thing to thing very seamlessly. The one thing that I find really interesting that I can maybe talk about is that it does have clever things to say, GTA 5. Like, GTAs aren't known for being very sensitive or very intelligent, but it really goes into as you play it yourself and don't just watch Let's Plays. Like, you see how from the very beginning, it's obvious that Michael and Trevor are basically the same person. It's just that Michael is a more socially acceptable form of Trevor.
Right.
And it's just a theme that goes through the whole thing. And I do find that quite clever, that like Trevor, in a way, even though he is the classic psychopath maniac, quotation marks, because he's honest about who he is, it comes across as more respectable in a way than Michael, who is maybe not as violent, but he's like yelling at his wife and kids, and he's sitting on all his riches, but secretly he's mortgaged up to the hilt, and he's like not living an authentic life. And in a way, you end up disliking Michael more than you end up disliking Trevor, even though Trevor is outwardly an absolute madman.
Mm-hmm.
So that side of it I'm enjoying.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's a really interesting take, because, as you say, they're both sociopaths and they're both killers, but Michael's got like a tennis court and a psychiatrist, and that's kind of the difference, isn't it? It's like Michael wears a suit when he does his murder, whilst Trevor's just in like a grubby t-shirt, but there's no kind of almost disparity for morality between those two people.
Yeah, and there's not even, it's really strange because it's not even a matter of money, because even though Michael is outwardly rich, he does say a couple of times, I'm mortgaged up to the hilt, like this is all fake. Whereas with Trevor, it's like he lives in a trailer park, but he runs basically a meth empire and a weapons empire, and he can fly planes. So it's like it's a really interesting balance, and also really interesting that Franklin is like this young guy who apparently is newer to the sort of crime life, yet he's the most sensible out of all of them. So there is like really clever moments to the story like that. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think people play GTA for the story. It's for the sort of, you dive into it and you just get into the mindset of mindlessly doing the things in the world. And I feel like I'll be able to say better whether I enjoyed it or not when I'm done with it. Just one small thing I want to say before I'm done is that I have a correction to make about Mafia 2, because I've been playing all these games because this year is my year of Yakuza and I want to have comparison games. Mm-hmm. And Mafia 2, I would now not recommend buying it, because once you hit the halfway mark, technically it's terrible. I've had to restart the game because textures didn't load in, and the door texture didn't load in, meaning I couldn't trigger a cutscene to actually, do the mission. I kept failing because there was no door.
Oh my God.
The frame rate on driving is so bad that it makes it hard to play the game. And this is just like a cut after maybe like chapter 9 or 10 when it becomes pretty unbearable. So there's something going on there and they need to patch it. Otherwise, it's just not. I'm sorry. And I know people probably worked really hard on this and there must be other stuff going on in the background as to why it was released like this. And I hear that the original game had problems as well, but it's just not in a state where I would recommend buying it now. It's so shaky that it gets in the way of what should be a good game. So that's unfortunate.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap up our game discussion with Occams. I'm very curious to hear about your thoughts on Maneater.
Well, I realized this is the first and only game I've platinumed on my own.
Whoa.
And now, to be fair, it's not a particularly difficult platinum to get, but there's an arcadey feeling of this game that really, really reminds me of the Tony Hawk series. In terms of the collectibles, the speed of it, the kind of silliness. You eat people, but at no point is it it's not particularly gory or anything. It's really, really fun. And I think they just kind of captured lightning in a bottle with this one. I've been reading online about it. People seem to really enjoy it. It's very pretty. The shark, and you can get these upgrades to have electricity powers or armor or shadow body. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's so stupid, but it's so much fun. And I think it's $40. I got it from GameFly, but I believe it's like a $40 game. If you need something that's just dumb fun in the purest sense, if you wish you could play a Tony Hawk type game, but you don't have those games with you anymore, check it out. It's really, really fun. If I had one complaint, the story for what it is. I wish it had been a little more fleshed out. But I really think that they had this idea, and they had these elements like it's gonna be like an electric shark. It's like Gremlins 2, like armor shark, whatever. And then they had to sort of build a reason for that to exist, and that kind of explains the story. But no, it's a really good time. There's a lot of fun little Easter eggs. So you get these collectibles. One of them you can find are landmarks, and they have these little cutscenes. And it's I forget the fella's name now. It's the guy from SNL, Chris Parnell. Is that his name?
Yeah, that's a name.
Yeah. He does all the narration. He does a fantastic job with it. But there's a bit. One of the landmarks are these giant underwater, these 3 seashells, and it's a reference to Demolition Man, and it just made me really happy. Like they had a lot of fun with this game, and yeah, I really highly recommend that. It's a great time waster, and you smile a lot, which is pleasant right now.
So help me out here, because I haven't had a chance to look into this. What's kind of the gameplay loop here? Is it like you're like dropped into an area and you have like a bunch of objectives to complete, or?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You are trying to start out as a baby shark, and you eat things to level up and grow and to be able to eat bigger things, and that's the kind of the gameplay loop. There are some areas are gated off, where you need to be a certain size. So there's like baby, teen, adult, and then elder as your final like mega shark form. And certain gates can only be broken if you are like a teen or an elder. And then that allows you to go to different areas. There are like combative creatures, everything from alligators to orca whales, which will try to attack you. And then there's just a variety of things you can eat. And there's like license plates that you can collect, and some of them are on land, and you can actually you jump on the water on the land, and you like flop around and stuff. There was a really good bit whenever you're in. It's a series of like overpriced condos on the shore, and you can like go like jump on land, and if you need a breather, you can jump into some swimming pool, which is great to see. You're like this giant shark in a swimming pool, and you see the people who own the home like running around the swimming pool, screaming because there's this giant electric shark in their swimming pool, and then you eat them. It's a really, really fun game. I hope in the future they patch in an auto like a targeting system, like a lock on, because you have to sort of manually do that, and when you are traversing a fully 3D realm like underwater, that can get a little confusing. But sure. it was rarely a huge issue. But no, it's a really good time.
Because like one of the things that's a kind of a bugbear to a lot of people are like underwater levels in games. So when you make a game that's like entirely underwater, you have to work really hard on making sure it's not just like an entire game of terrible underwater level. But it seems like they've done a good job though.
Yeah, they have a nice variety of kind of locations and different types of underwater areas. Like you start out in a bayou, and one of the last areas you can go to is like the Gulf of Mexico. And there's rarely did I encounter anything that was really frustrating. Some of the navigation, like if you're in a couple caves, can get a little iffy, but they have actually it's kind of clever. They used the flora and fauna. So a lot of they have this like seaweed that's purple that kind of indicates like an area you can go to. There's stuff here, and the exits were indicated by like bright neon orange like seaweed and coral and stuff.
Right.
And it's that little kind of the pathfinding systems I love in games, and how they create this stuff. So little things kind of teach you like, oh, okay, this is where I can go look for this. So.
Now, I just have to know, in terms of the story, is there a mayor character who urges people to go back to the beach after you've eaten like 25 people?
I wish there was, but there is the SNL guy does have a lot of commentary on like, instead of there being a mayor character, it's really just the city that like a lot of these areas have like abandoned land projects or like melted nuclear reactors. It's a lot of the game. The commentary is like how people have fucked with this environment to the point to where like all this stuff is happening, and now you kind of take on the role of nature's avenger in a sort of not so subtle way, but it's not like outwardly like you're gonna fight back, but there's a lot of like the people kind of deserve it.
You mess with our environment, you get electric sharks. So that's how it works, people.
Absolutely.
I just got one more question.
Mhm.
I was just wondering, does the game make you work hard, make you spend hard, make you want all of the love?
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. So make you buy cards, make you cut cards, make you fall real hard in love.
Ooh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Like that was actually on the back of the box that I didn't get because I got it from GameFly. Also, it is a side note. If you like the idea of shark stuff, go watch Deep Blue Sea. It is I think my generation's Jaws.
Is that the one where is that the one
LL
with Samuel
Cool J?
Jackson? Oh, Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, he's in it,
Okay.
and LL Cool J plays the chef.
Yep.
Who actually a little fun fact about that movie is they wrote more lines for him when he got there because they liked him so much and he was such a good actor and had so much fun with the role that they gave him a bigger part than he was originally supposed to have.
I believe he originally just had one line and then spent the rest of the movie licking his lips.
Yeah.
Yes.
And doing prayer hands and wearing a tank top.
Yeah.
If you get the chance, go look up the music video for Deep Blue Sea. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's a really good song. I love that song. That he has the black contacts and like shark eyes.
And then he
good.
morphs into a shark by the end there. It's something.
Fight the power! Fight the power!
All right. That is it for games, and we are not going to be talking about any news this week because there's really no news to talk about with everything being pushed back because of the Black Lives Matter protests. So we're going to get into the goddamn mail.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
Goddamn mail.
We got a few questions worth asking this week, especially considering that this coming week would have been when E3 would have taken place, but it is not, obviously. By the way, can you imagine trying to hold E3 right now? No, I cannot. That would be terrifying. So we're going to start with a question from the Limo Maker. They are asking, what are the best and worst multiplayer modes you have played? And Charlotte, I want to start with you on this one.
I very rarely play multiplayer games. It's just not really my thing. Even with my partner, we tend to just play a single player, like story-based game, just pass the controller backwards and forwards. But I guess if I'm going to be kind of, I actually like Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. I thought those games were actually pretty good. I like Mario Kart. I always like Mario Kart. I like the newer Mario parties. I've never really got into the GameCube and era Mario Party, to be honest. And for bad ones, I just don't have enough experience to say there's been anything I've particularly not liked. So that's about it, really.
You know, I'm with you on the Mario and Sonic at the Olympics Games. I thought those were a blast, especially the winter ones when they implemented the fitness, what is that called? Balance board into some of the skiing and snowboarding events. I really got a kick out of that. So
yeah, I mean, if you're playing with like a younger sibling, like as I was playing with a sibling who was 7 to 8 years younger than me, depending on the month. So those were perfect games to play with a younger sibling. So they did the job, even though people take the mick out of those games. They really did the job for me back then. So I guess actually, I would say Just Dance is not bad in the sense of it's a bad game, but more you have to be careful using it because unless you have a massive living room, there's so much potential to injure the other person. So I'd say I've had a couple of bad experiences with that where I felt kind of painful joints afterwards, or we've been almost hitting each other playing it on the Kinect. So I guess that's my one slightly bad multiplayer experience.
I've played a ton of multiplayer games. So I'm going to go with more of a game that surprised me more than anything in terms of the multiplayer. I remember Resistance 2 on the PlayStation 3. I remember playing the campaign of that and not really being all that crazy about it. I remember just thinking like, it was just a generic alien sci-fi shooter thing kind of set in the 50s. I wasn't overly hyped about that game or anything like that. But then the multiplayer, I played the multiplayer and it's like they put all their crazy ideas into that instead. It had like 8-player online co-op. So up to eight people just going around killing swarms and swarms of these alien things. And it had then 60-person multiplayer on console at the time, which was nuts.
No,
like it was just really over the top. All the weapons were extremely over the top. It took me off guard how good the multiplayer was in Resistance 2 compared to the actual game itself. As for worst, nothing really comes to my mind at the moment, except for something I've been playing recently, which is Fallout 76's Battle Royale mode. Nuclear Winter. Hey, remember that? Nuclear Winter. They announced that at E3 to a roaring applause of Bethesda employees. And then it came out, and hackers won every round. And spoiler, they're still winning every round because they can just like fly up into the air above the map. And so basically the giant burning thing around the map will just engulf all the normal players and kill everybody except for them. So that's really awesome. Every time I've tried playing that, either something has broken where I've fallen through the map and died, or I just died in general, or a hacker has won. It's had no significant updates whatsoever in 8 months. It's still in the beta, apparently, on the main menu screen there. I don't know what the goal with that thing is.
For me, I'm going to go ahead and say the worst is actually a very recent game. It's Luigi's Mansion 3 with the coin floating Scream Park minigame. I don't think anyone actually enjoys the floating mechanic from that otherwise masterpiece. And it is easily the worst and most boring multiplayer time I've had. The best, I'm going to have to go with Kid Icarus Uprising. It's incredibly fast-paced. It's so much fun to mix and match the different weapons and find out what your best setup is. And I really love the angel mechanic when you're doing the team deathmatch or the team mode. I would honestly love to see just the multiplayer brought over to Switch, even if it was like a free-to-play with season passes. I would be down for it because I just had so much fucking fun playing that on the 3DS. Occams, what about you?
All right, best is probably going to be GoldenEye for N64.
Classic.
That was a foundational multiplayer experience for me growing up. And worst is going to be Dead Space 2.
I'm not familiar with the Dead Space 2 multiplayer.
Yeah, you should look it up. It's you're aware of the concept of fisting, right?
Unfortunately, I told you about the nasty picture I saw this week.
Yeah. If there was ever a multiplayer added to a game, much in the manner of a fist can be added into an anus or a vagina, it was Dead Space 2. And on top of that, they were doing this thing where they had these, like you had to, when you bought the game, you got a pass, like a code that you had to input to actually use the multiplayer. And so if you didn't have that code, you couldn't actually play the multiplayer.
Oh,
they did this for a minute, and I think they eventually went on to other stuff.
It was a big EA thing, wasn't it?
It was
called the multiplayer pass.
Yeah.
So if you bought the game pre-owned, you basically couldn't play the multiplayer.
Yeah, it went away somewhat quickly, not quickly enough. But yeah, it was garbage, and it was in a really good horror series. They added a multiplayer, so that's my worst.
Chris, let's go to wrap up with you.
Best. Quick answer is Rock Band. Played with like a bunch of people. I played Rock Band with friends, and I've played Rock Band at an expo with strangers where everyone was just on a different instrument, and it was playing really loudly, and that was a lot of fun. That was cool. The other one, my other favorite multiplayer experience is from the hugely unfulfilled promise of Kane Lynch 2, Dog Days. A game where everything was great about it apart from the game. But it had a multiplayer mode called Undercover Cop, which was you and a bunch of other players played a team escaping from a heist, and you all Left 4 Dead style had to get to a van at the bottom of the building and down the street while being bombarded by like a whole bunch of AI cops, but like proper heavily armored, heavy gun cops. But one of the players is an undercover cop, and the player who has that role, it's their duty to eliminate all of the other team without the team figuring out they're the undercover cop.
Oh, that's so dope sounding.
It is, isn't it? It is. And it played fucking great because you're basically running around pretending to shoot at these AI cops. You have all these bags of money among you, and you have to pass them out, and you have to get as many of the bags to the van as possible. and as many of you have to get to the van and shut the van door. But one of the players, unbeknownst to the rest of the players, their job is to eliminate the entire team without anyone twigging that it's you running around eliminating everyone. So you'd stand at the end of like a room taking part in a gunfight with these cops, but you're just like shooting over their heads and going like, chuck me ammo and all that. And then like, as soon as someone's back's turned, you like shoot them in the head and no one sees you do it. And it's like, oh, you know, Mike's down or whatever. And you're just like, it wasn't me. I'm getting to the van or whatever.
Fuck,
that's fantastic, isn't it?
That sounds amazing. They need to bring that back in whatever.
That needs to be a
can.
game. Just a separate game.
And it's attached to one of like the worst shooters ever fucking made. Because like that, those Kane Lynch games, all they are is good ideas, terribly executed.
Fuck, I'm gonna be thinking about that all day now.
So yeah.
Remember when Mass Effect had a multiplayer mode? No, probably not.
Oh, and as for negative, I'm just going to accentuate the positives here and eliminate the negatives and not mess around with Mr. In Between.
Okay, next question comes from D Francis 22. They want to know, are we happy or sad about not having an E3 this year? I've already answered this question in the last installment of CJ and Holmes Disagree. But I'm interested in y'all's perspective on this, coming from a position of people who have to cover the event like Chris or Dan, or people who just watch it as a fan of gaming like Occams and Charlotte. So Dan, let's start with you.
I'm indifferent.
Okay.
Like, I don't feel one way or the other, because the reality is we're going to have big game announcements like all summer long. I suppose on a professional level, it'd be nicer maybe to have them all kind of in that 1 week there. But yeah, like overall, I don't feel anything really about it. It's because, like I said, we're going to have these big game announcements. It's not like those are going away or anything like that. So, and not only that, but E3 is coming back next year. That's confirmed. It's not outright dead yet. So I feel pretty indifferent.
Okay. Occams.
For the event itself, I could go either way. It's certainly the landscape has changed, and long gone are the days where we would download the videos as fast as we could, burn to a CD, then go to someone's house to watch them, because not all of us had internet access or the time to sit together. But what I miss, and I miss terribly, is that build up to the day it happens, when we all gather in the comment section and kind of live comments the reveals. And you have the Detoid box open, you've got like the YouTube comment thing open, you've got your Discord open with friends or whatever you're doing. And I miss that gathering, because that was a huge part of the E3 experience for me for many years now that I've been on the site. So in a way, I do miss it. I miss that, certainly. The event itself, like I said, things have changed, so I don't miss it that much. But I do. I'm sorry I can't be with everybody and just, guffaw and laugh and have my jaw drop like I like to.
All right, and Chris?
Me personally, honestly, I'm only looking at this from kind of like a professional stance. Like, I'm only looking at this from the stance of like, how's this going to affect work? How's this going to affect the way we work and when I have to be around? E3 is difficult for me at the best of times, because all of those press conferences, like especially the Sony one, used to happen at 3 a.m., like Britain time. Do you know what I mean? So in terms of the change of E3, all I'm really looking at is like how it alters how these sporadic reveals make writing about this stuff so much more stressful. And that's the only way I can look at it personally. But in the bigger picture, I do kind of feel bad for the people who kind of make an event out of E3 and get together with their friends and stuff like that.
Absolutely, and that's what I argued in my little piece with Holmes. On that note, Goofy or Brute wants to know that when E3 does come back, do we have what a dream version of it could be like? And Chris, I want to start with you on this. Like, what to you is a dream version of E3?
Honestly, I don't really know. It's out of my jurisdiction. All I know is the stuff that they were thinking of bringing in all sounded terrible. It did, though, didn't it?
It did.
Cutainment where whilst you were queuing for stuff, people would just be approaching you and make you play demos and make you sign up for things whilst you were standing waiting to play the demos, and taking, you know, and they wanted to give out contracts to like a bunch of influencers to have them there and have them kind of host all of the reveals and stuff like that. And it's all just stuff that like I wouldn't want to be any part of, like if I was at the show, to be honest. So I don't know what I think E3 should come back as, but I just don't want it to come back as what they were going to make it.
I agree. I'm right there with you. Dan?
Mine's a bit of a buzzkill for the people that maybe want to attend E3 like as a convention, so I'll go into it. My dream version of E3 is closed to the public again. Whoops, sorry. Bye, influencers, yada, yada, yada. The conferences are all pre-recorded and thrown up on YouTube, day of, and everything else, including indie games, all that stuff, is behind closed doors. The reason why, because my best memories of E3 were reasons to speculate and get excited again. And the reality is, when it was behind closed doors, a lot of that was because it was exciting to just read little details in magazines of an upcoming game, or to watch interviews, and like the one time of the year I'd tune into Spike TV. And the thing is, in my dream version of E3, we already have literally dozens of video game conventions.
Yes.
My dream E3 doesn't need to be another one. So it would strictly go back to being this closed off thing. And this time the conferences would just be chucked up on YouTube and pre-recorded. As much as of a buzzkill as that would be to some people, I think that behind the closed doors magic is what made E3 special.
All right. No shame in expressing that. Occams?
Yeah, mine's pretty simple. It's an E3 where they announce Silent Hills, and then they bring back Shadow Hearts. Is it?
And that's it. That's your do that on the Monday morning, and then everyone can go home.
Yeah, absolutely. Just those two things, and then we all go eat barbecue.
That sounds delicious.
CJ, I assume for your dream E3 will be one where your home phone number doesn't get released to the public.
Yes, I would like to go through an E3 where that does not happen. Yeah, that would be nice, where my home phone number and address aren't leaked into a spreadsheet. Also, just two things that I would like to see for future E3s. One, give everyone who's in the press a cattle prod to get all the influencers out of the way so we can get to our appointments on time. And then I would like, and this is going to have to come from the developers and publishers, not necessarily the ESA, but I really think that any game that is a demo at E3 that people can play should be released to the public like a week after. There's really no reason to not do that. Because you can have the reveal trailer, you can have the write-ups on the demo from the press and the influencers that are there, and then you can have people try it for themselves. I just think it's the opposite of what Dan wants to be more, because this would be even way more open than what it is right now. But I think giving people a chance who can't afford to go to E3 because it's stupid expensive for what it is, a chance to try the game that they're most looking forward to, even if it's a limited time demo. We know that they can do that. So that would be my dream E3. Just open it up even more by using the power of the internet.
Just before you move on, like, I do think, like, I've been attending game shows since the 90s. Like, since the early 90s, I went to Game Expos in like 92. Do you know what I mean? And
right.
And when I was younger, I loved it. I had a great time at them. I think a big problem now is just sometimes you're just too old to go to them and like your knees hurt too much. You know what I mean? But it's a shame because you never want to take fun away from people. So I always hope that there's going to be something for people to attend to. But I just think it just, as long as there is something that exists where they can show trailers, where they can reveal consoles, that's always going to be cool. But I think the problem is rather than that happen in glorious event room C, that now just happens on the internet, doesn't it? And that's kind of the issue.
I think the magic or the idea of like attending E3 and it being this sort of paradise of mecca of gaming has really gone away. Like Chris, you talked about going in the early 90s, And I didn't attend a lot of video game stuff in the early 90s, mostly just like competitions at Blockbusters, which is not a paradise of anything. But we see now that like knowing you guys and being on the internet, you see like it's a lot of work and it's tiring and people stink and they're coughing and you get sick and you don't sleep enough and you work all day, then you drink all night, and it's part of the gig. Like you're not just doing it. Well, I'm sure some of it's stress relief, but some of it's like networking. That it's not like just fun. Like it sounds like it'd be fun, but it's really not. It's a lot of work. So a lot of the I guess what is it, the bloom has fallen off the rose a little bit in terms of that. And I think that if you want to have fun, there are those like smaller moments that you really look for in gaming to actually enjoy rather than have to make a living.
If you'll allow me to go Grandpa Simpson for a bit, I remember going to a game show in the early 90s that had an amazing arcade and everything was on free play, and I just sat and played Dragon's Lair 2 Time Warp for ages, and then they revealed in Europe for the first time ever Echo the Dolphin, and people were just like, the fucking animation. Like,
oh, that animation was so good back then.
yeah.
Occams, Mullins is asking, how does he get into the Eric Andre show? The answer is weed, right? Like copious amounts of weed.
Absolutely. Also, build a time machine because that's been canceled for a couple years now.
If you want to know if the Eric Andre show is for you, just Google Eric Andre gay cop. If you can laugh at that, you should be able to laugh at the rest of the show. And if like some of the stunts come off negatively to you, just remember it's all fake.
Yeah, and he it is one of the best. Like him and Hannibal Buress just doing anything is so much fun. I really, really wish there's a slate of Adult Swim shows that I wish would come out on DVD or Blu-ray or something. That's top of my list. The Heart She Holler is really good. If you don't know that one, if you like David Lynch, anything, watch The Heart She Holler because it's essentially Adult Swim decided to make a Twin Peaks. I really like. Yeah, it's so fucking good. Patton Oswalt's in it. It's great. Mr. Pickles, I'm quite fond of. I know, and there's a UK Blu-ray of that, but that's really fun. And Moral Oral, the last season, I think CJ, we've had this conversation before. Maybe Chris, we did too. But the last season of Moral Oral is some of the best television ever made, and I don't think a lot of people know that. I actually discovered the Mountain Goats because of the last season of Moral Oral, and I will be eternally grateful to that show. So.
I think the entire Adult Swim catalog is on HBO Max.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm one of those annoying people who really wants to own the thing because one day the cloud thing, if it goes away, which it will, or change into some new form, and I don't get that new form, I won't have access to it anymore. So I really want to own a copy. Yeah.
And if you live in this teeny tiny country called Germany, then you can't watch anything. So that's why it would be good if stuff was out on DVD. But I think it's Home Movies. Was that Adult Swim or?
Yes,
I think that was Comedy. I thought that was Comedy Central.
Okay, well that's on YouTube, so we can watch the entirety of Home Movies because that's been on YouTube for the entire time I've been in Germany. Because I watched it my first year in Germany, and just nobody's thought to take any of it down. So
that's great.
Yeah,
I love Home Movies, and then they went on to do Metalocalypse.
Oh no, you're right. It was Adult Swim.
Very early Adult Swim.
Yeah, very, very early.
I think that'd been one of their first shows.
I like She-Ra.
The new She-Ra?
Both.
Okay, SJW.
I'm just Shadow Weaver. It's just amazing. Just amazing. Old Shadow Weaver was amazing, and new Shadow Weaver's amazing. Just. Did I ever tell you that my parents wouldn't let me have She-Ra toys when I was a kid because I wanted She-Ra toys? Yeah, like I had He-Man figures, and I wanted She-Ra figures to go with them because they were part of the universe. But my parents were just like, no, because you're not a girl, and they made these toys for you and She-Ra figures for the girls. And even at like 5 years old, I was like, they're the same universe.
I had the same thing when buying female X-Men action figures. Like apparently that was a big deal that I didn't just want Cyclops and Nightcrawler and Wolverine, that I wanted Jean Grey and Storm too.
That's so weird.
Joke's on them. I turned out to be gay. So,
and I bought my Shadow Weaver figure anyway when I turned 28. So,
I'll tell a very quick story about myself that I think perfectly encapsulates my childhood and then what I turned into as an adult. So my brother was a big hunter and a big fisherman growing up. I took to neither of these things because it involved going outside. But I loved his fishing lures. I found the colors very pretty. The designs were cool. And I've always liked aquatic things. So the lures that look like little minnows and things are just really pretty. So one day I was living in Mississippi. So I was, let's say 8, maybe 7. I really liked his lures. And I had the box open. I was looking at them, kind of admiring them. And I really wanted to do something with them. So I decorated my sweatshirt that I was wearing in fishing lures. And see, the problem with that is all these fishing lures, as you well know, have hooks. And so I am draped in a sweatshirt of fishing lures. And then I tried to stand up to show my parents. And then a baker's dozen or so fishing lures caught in my skin all at once.
oh,
And I screamed. I screamed very loudly because it hurt. And my mom ran up and was horrified to see her son covered in fishing lures and little blood spots appearing all over his shirt. And they had to cut them off of me and the shirt. And my brother was super pissed because I destroyed some of his best lures. And my mom was just horrified that she thought maybe I had tetanus or whatever you can get from fish blood because those were never cleaned. I don't even think you clean fishing lures. Maybe you do. I don't know. I don't go outside. But that's me in a nutshell, folks.
and on that note, that is the end of the goddamn mail.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
Goddamn mail.
We are just about out of time, but before we go, Occams, do we have a community shout out this week?
Oh, we do. We got a few, actually. We can do some birthday shout outs. Locke, Lokhe, Loke, maybe. Happy birthday. Gomar, happy birthday. Mish Former, happy birthday. Planet Piss 69, I'm so happy I got to say those combination of words. Happy birthday. Pliskin, happy birthday. And Sailor Zeebs, congrats on the second or another kid. I don't know if it's your second or not, but congrats on that. And I want to give a big, huge, massive community shout out to the community because it's been a really difficult time and y'all have kind of come together to have discussions and be there for one another and support and share what's made you happy and share what's made you sad. And that's been a wonderful thing. So shout out to the community.
All right. That is it for this episode of Podtoid. On behalf of Charlotte, Chris, Occams, Dan, and myself, thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, or the Destructoid YouTube channel.